Without blackness, America would not be able to be America. So we must stop deleting blackness from everything that happens in America, because there is nothing that is existing in America without black bodies, black hands, black talent, black energy. So the prophetic in America has been keen and precise for years in the black community. And it's time now for us to recognize who in our community we all look to as the master in the prophetic. And that is E. Bernard Jordan, who is a black man. And that is extremely important. No more deleting blackness in America. America's black prophet of God is E. Bernard Jordan.
A mighty wind shall blow in the 21st century that will uproot many areas. I saw the eternal calendar of time and saw the year 2005. 2005. I will cause Michigan to become a heralding trumpet of my changes, saith the Lord. In this place I will touch their water supply, and they will know that I am God. You will see hate groups within the nation that will become very vocal, and they will trumpet their opinions of the government and despise the decisions being made. It will be the day of a great crossover. I will change the money, and a new currency will surface in the marketplace. Watch the coins. Strange diseases came upon the shores of America, and entire geographical areas were faced with great concerns. I saw diseases and plagues of every kind. Many could be identified, but even those picked up new strains and had to be redefined before they hit the shores of men's lives. Children will start to take vaccinations that are quite different from the vaccinations in the 60s and 80s. I will remove the classroom setting out of the building as you now know them. This will be the time that you will see more people working out of their homes. It will be the season that you will see children sign in and take courses over computer terminals and just appear at certain centers of learning for scoring and testing, saith the Lord.
The master prophet is anointed and chosen. I'd give both words. The Bible says many are called, few are chosen. He is chosen. He's had, in the decades that I've been close enough to him to know what he's doing, he's had many offers to do other things he could have done. And he cannot do anything else. He keeps getting pulled back into that. He could pastor a mega church. He could be in entertainment. He could just do private consultations for heads of states. But he keeps getting pulled back into this prophetic ministry. And as he talks for blacks and the oppressed, he doesn't have to do that. He could leave that alone and be embraced by the so-called mainstream, but he's connected his own stream. That's why I know he's chosen. He cannot run away from the anointing on him.
My name is Larry D. Reed, and I'm the host of Larry Reed Live, your most favorite digital entertainment news and talk show that's out here on these social media streets. And what I do is I provide commentary about what is happening in our world, particularly the black community and the black church. Bishop Jordan said to me, after 20 years of pastoring in the box, I went into entertainment. And I said, I'll just use my platform like a pulpit and I'll pastor people this way. He said to me, he said, no. He said, you will go back to pastoring. And I looked at him and I said, hell no. This is what you think. But then when I went to God about it, I understood that I don't have to pastor the way I used to pastor. I can be who I am, think the way that I think, do what I do, and there is a people that will follow me as a result. And as a result, I went right back into being somebody's darn pastor.
In 1993, David Dinkins, first black mayor of New York, was running for re-election. And he had Reverend Jesse Jackson and I touring churches to campaign for his re-election. And we ended up late one Sunday evening, about a week or two before the election, going by Pilgrim Cathedral in Brooklyn. And Bishop Brown, Roy Brown, who was bishop then, who I'd known since Pilgrim Baptist, he welcomed us, brought us out, place was packed. And Mayor Dinkins made his speech appealing for people to vote for his re-election. Then Reverend Jackson spoke, and then I spoke. And this is 93. Now, you must remember 93 was right around the time I had finished the Tawana Brawley case, which many people said was a fraud. I was standing up for the Central Park Five, who were in jail, and everybody thought they were guilty. This is years before they were vindicated. So I'm at the height of a controversy. I just beat a tax case. So, but because Bishop Brown knew me as a little boy, no, he didn't care about that. He put all that up because I had run for the U.S. Senate the year before, and 2/3 of blacks statewide had voted for me. Mayor Dinkins felt it was not a political risk to have me work black churches with him and Jesse, and I was Jesse's youth director when I was 13. So I got up and I said what I had to say. And we're getting ready to go. And Bishop Brown said, just a minute, I want the prophet to address y'all. And Bishop Jordan got up and came and put his hands up. And I remember Dinkins kind of looked, because Dinkins did not come out of that background. Jesse looked at me, who did come out of the Baptist church and out of the South. And I said, yeah, he's supposed to be a real prophet.
You see, prophecy is ministry on another level. It's like musicians. The reason why songwriters are songwriters is because they hear something other people don't hear. The reason why singers are great singers is because they hear something other people don't hear. And the reason why prophets are so valuable is because they hear something other people don't hear.
Because God says he brought y'all here today, and this seed is releasing a promise. Alvin and Roberta Freeman came to the church during the time when we were sending all the members home. These are people that were givers. And every time they gave, there was a word that was given to them around the seed that they had given.
He said, I see a house, and we were in the process of getting the house. He says, we know you're getting a house. It's not that house. He says, I see a house with 3 rooms. And he says, what's going on with you and children?
What's going on? I'm getting to number 3, and I want to call them children. What's happening with children in your lives? Give them the mic. We should find out what's going on here.
We've been married for 3 years, and we've wanted to have children, and it just hasn't happened for us yet.
All right. Well, today is your day. During that time, we found out it was difficult to conceive. But the word of prophecy through the company of prophets and myself, we kept seeing children where medical science was seeing nothing. Because God says he brought y'all here today, and this seed is releasing a promise that out of these 3 years of marriage, whatever the situation has been, that block is going to be removed. Because I saw in your home, I saw 3 bedrooms, but they were children bedrooms. They were bedrooms for the children. And God is going to grant y'all children.
So in, in my feeble mind, it's like, oh, I'll get pregnant 3 times, you know? And years went by, actually, and no pregnancy, no pregnancy, no pregnancy.
And however it manifests, just be open that it's the moving of God that is working in your lives, because it's been a prayer and it's a dream that's being answered, saith the Spirit of the living God. Amen. Thank you, Jesus.
So thinking about that prophecy, he said, don't think of it the way that be open to other ways. So we went through IVF, and it was 3 failures, and it was our 4th and final try. And we said, well, this is it. Let's go for it. And 4th and final try, they put 2 eggs back. So we absolutely knew that it's going to be twins. So it was probably about our 2nd sonogram. We knew it was twins, 2 heartbeats. 2nd sonogram, the doctor says, that's interesting.
Now, I get nervous. She says, that's interesting. And I said, what, doc, what? She said, well, I think you're going to have 3 instead of 2.
Are you going to say hi? Yeah. Hey, big boy. What are you going to say? Say hi, Auntie Tiffany. Hi.
So we ended up being told we were going to have triplets.
And just like Master Prophet had said, that he saw a house with 3 bedrooms and 3 children, we were pregnant with triplets.
I didn't know that they were trying to have children. I like to look at it this way. Each time they gave, they were documenting their respect.
This is my beautiful family. My wife, Dr. Roberta Freeman. My oldest, Amani Jordan. My middle, Alvin Jeffrey. And my youngest but most bodacious, Ava Journey.
Not all prophets are the same. Some prophets, they feel it. Some prophets, they see it. Some prophets, they hear a voice in their ear that they must repeat. Some of us get these symbols, these mind movies in our head that we must then make sense to ourselves and then deliver to you the message that you need to hear.
The prophet started saying that, you know, you're going to struggle, Mr. Mayor. It's going to be close. I can't see where it's going to go. And everybody was wishing he was going to say he was going to win. He didn't, and he didn't win. And he said to Jesse that you stay strong, you keep carrying the mantle. But then he looked at me and he said that you are going to see greater things than you would ever thought of. All of these controversies, all of these negatives will turn around. I see you in high places. I see you sitting with the highest people. All of this that you've gone through will be over.
But Reverend Sharpton, at that time, Tawana Brawley situation, a lot of legal situations going on around him, the Lord said he would raise his voice up in the nation.
He said, I see nothing but influence, popularity, sitting in high places, which was outrageous at the time. There was nobody that thought I'd be sitting in high places. People thought that I may get through by the skin of my teeth, and that would be good. We left there that night, and Jesse said, that was quite a prophecy for you. I said, yeah, and he said, we'll see. And I never forgot that night.
The word of the Lord came forth and said that we had to go back to New York City. And we started back meeting at the Dorel Inn on 49th and Lexington. And it was a powerful time. We had people from all over, from all walks of life coming in because they heard, there was a whisper, there was a rumor that there was a prophet in New York City. So if you was a Christian, we even had Muslims come to get the word of the Lord. And what was so powerful, there was no respect of person. If you wanted to hear what the Spirit of God was saying, then there was an opening, there was an entranceway. And during that time, we had Ron. He came in. And when he came in, it was a weeknight. He had this huge family Bible. And I mean, loud with the speakers on and stuff, sitting there. And Reverend Ron, what was so unique and amazing, he didn't come trying to hide, trying to get over on the prophet. He was there because he wanted to know what thus said the Lord.
I was with the group Run DMC, and I was, like many people, that stay up late night and are going through things and looking at television. And turning the channel, and I saw this young, he was Prophet Jordan. Then at the end of the show, there was a bunch of dates that he was leaving town. Like, I guess he was a traveling prophet at that time. I called and said, is the prophet ever gonna be there? Because I saw all these dates. They said, no, he's here every Tuesday and Sunday at the Dorel Inn. Distraught as I was, I got my Bible and I went down to the Dorel Inn. The prophet was up doing what he does. There's a nice little audience there.
At that time, there was a lot of other situations that was happening with him, but he wanted to know what God was saying concerning his life.
And like I said, I was in a really bad place, mentally, every way you could think of. And I remember he was preaching, and he stood me up, young man Stan, he prophesied to me. I was blown away by the prophecy. The prophecy hit all the marks and said all the things that I needed to hear at the time and told me of my future. But I remember one of the sermons, I'll always remember this, life is not easy, let everyone stand. And that just kind of blew me away, like, oh, snap. Well, that clears that up. Life's not easy, let everyone stand is how he ended the sermon.
I've seen real prophets and I've seen fortune tellers. And there's a difference. Fortune teller can read your palm or something like that. I've seen people that could really speak truth, but they are rare. Many that came through our church ended up having a moment or either being a fraud. There was something about what the Prophet Jordan said that resonated in me as true. And then as I saw him, I started watching his ministry, started seeing things he would say would come about, read his book, things that a fortune teller couldn't guess. I mean, this man talked about a black president way before Barack Obama went to U.S. Senate.
In this book, in the third volume, the 4 volumes in this one, and in the third volume, written in 1996.
It's on page 66, and it's talking about the first African-American president. In this hour, the day of the Lord will be revealed in a greater measure than that which has been witnessed in centuries gone by. You will see in your day where I shall take a man of color, an African-American, and cause him to win the presidency of the United States. Do not rejoice in this, for he shall be but a puppet dancing on the strings of manipulation, and the African-American community will suffer greatly at the hands of the nation.
The climate, the country, the way things were going, no way was a black man ever going to be president. Yet, the prophet wrote it. Not only did he speak it, let's go back, but he wrote about it. Who dares to put a word like that in a book that many people were going to read around the world? But he did. And so he's off. You know, he really missed it this time, an African-American. But I tell you, we began to see that word come to pass.
However, it was good seeing a whole nigga. Oh, I don't know if I can say that. Although it was very good seeing this black man in this White House. Black man in White House. My God, that was so good to me.
We rejoiced to see a black man in office, but we suffered greatly. Until this day, I don't think that we have really measured the trauma that took place and the racism that continue to be fueled as a result of the price of that gift that was given to us.
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. A long, long way from home.
So there's certain things you cannot fabricate and you cannot make up and you can't guess at. Some people call themselves prophets and they say things and get lucky. This was not lucky. These were things that were embedded. And when it strikes you personally, when he said to me at the height of my controversy, something that I myself in my fondest dreams would not have seen coming, I wouldn't have said that about me. And I promote myself. So that's when you say, this guy has a different kind of gift.
A matter of fact, when you said that, a little girl just ran into the picture.
That's my daughter, must be.
And I heard her saying, Daddy, something's opening up for you. And that's the word of the Lord.
He would come sometime do my syndicated radio show and he'd prophesy to people on there. And I got him aside. I said, how do you think Obama's going to do? He said, well, it's going to be very hard for our people. It's going to be very difficult. But you will have access to him. And you should be prepared for that. And I said, wait a minute. You know, you got Reverend Jackson in Chicago. You got his own pastor. They've kind of like distanced, but they'll make up. I'm always new. Why would I be the one? He says, I'm telling you, you will have access to it. And I became the civil rights leader that probably had more access to Obama than anybody. Many times I'd walk in the White House, and according to the right wing, I went 102 times while he was president. Many times I walk in there for events or meetings, and I think about the prophet. I sat up one night that I'll remember. President Obama invited me to a state dinner he had for the president of France. And I'm sitting at the table with the lady over the International Monetary, you know, they sign you the tables. So I'm sitting there with the head of the IMF and another chief aide of the president of France. And all I can think about is the prophet said that there's nobody who thought I'd be at a state dinner, all tuxedo down. And Obama looked over at and kind of nodded, and I nodded. But he didn't know what I was nodding. I was nodding about the prophecy. He was nodding about that he told me he would put me wherever he was in places. And I never forgot that. I think that part of when you know that a prophecy is real and a prophet is real is that it's almost like putting a password in your computer, iPad. It'll always light up. Something will hit your head and bring you right back to that prophecy. I guess that's God's way of reminding you that you didn't do this by yourself now.
There was another one that's pretty funny. He told me to travel light. I'm like, we going from Amsterdam to London? How am I going to travel light? I laid in that bed and said, oh, he must have meant leave his weed home.
So that word meant not just only travel light, okay, let me not take a lot of clothes, but it meant something else totally different from those that was hearing. And this is another thing which is so powerful with the prophetic. The prophetic is not there to embarrass you. Because I believe that God in his all-knowingness, he could have said, listen, do not take any weed, do not take any drugs. I mean, this is in the church, out open, but God in his infinite wisdom began to share and tell the prophet, tell Ron not to travel heavy, but to travel light. And he alone understood that prophetic word, and it saved him.
And I preached for sure. Them dogs was all around everybody's bags. And because I traveled light, I ain't go to jail across seas. That weed was home.
Isn't it interesting that the prophet did not say, don't do drugs. He just said, don't take the drugs with you over there in the plane. Now, the reality is that that prophecy is coded, and many times prophecies are coded. This is why I say to people all the time, it takes patient listening.
So I decided to bring my brother with me. And I didn't talk about Zoe too much because it was very different. Like I said, I was raised in the Catholic Church. You go, you put your $20 in, stay your 45 minutes, and then you go. So I said to him, why don't you come to church with me? Now, at the time, his girlfriend was pregnant. I wasn't supposed to know. My mother had told me. So we came up to the altar. I brought him up because I wanted him to get a word, and I wanted to expose him because it had blessed me so much. Bishop said, do you have a daughter? Are you having a child? He said no. Sweat immediately pouring down his head. Okay, now I knew he had a child. He said, well, I'm seeing a child, and the child is gonna come to the family, it's gonna bring the family together. He said no, he didn't know. So then he gave us additional prophecy saying, you're in education, you're gonna be a teacher leader. So he's listening, I'm listening, and I'm almost laughing because I know what Bishop's talking about. So then he says one more time, are you sure? Are you sure? He said, no, Master Prophet. So then we got in the car, we were driving. We're driving home, and he admits to me that he's gonna have a child. And Master Prophet was right in what he was saying. So that was one of the funnier prophecies, but I'll tell you, coming into a church with someone who has never been there, who Master Prophet has never met, for him to give a prophecy so accurate, you know, it was amazing and just reinforces everything I believed from when I started coming.
We were in service. And toward the end of the service, the Master Prophet, as he would, began to hear from God. And he began to just speak things that we didn't necessarily understand.
It was a long service that night. Really, I don't even think he was in the room with us. And he kept pacing back and forth across the stage.
During that time, I would go out in the spirit, and I could end up prophesying for 10 minutes or an hour.
I think he had been ministering to everybody one-on-one. He'd been ministering to people all night. By that time, quite frankly, I was sleepy. I had been there since maybe 6 o'clock in the morning. And I was ready to go home, and I was really, really tired. And, you know, at 1:20, we're saying, oh, God, please, can we go home? Please make him stop, please, God. And all of a sudden, we heard Bishop begin to prophesy, and he said, 911, just like that.
We had heard the prophetic word of 911, but we never connected the dots, you know.
And we started giggling between us because we're like, yes, God, we need help. This is an emergency, 911, we need help. We're just joking.
And that prophetic word, 911, was very specific. So we're asking ourselves, is it 911 or time? If it's 911, maybe what year is it connected to?
And he just kept saying it over and over. Now, we all know, 911 is an emergency. And so, we're trying to wait and hear the rest of the word, but nothing else came. It was just 911, and he didn't rush through it. He just spoke it and continued to speak 911. And so, people around, looking at one another, trying to, what is 911? What is he saying?
And then he got quiet and he stopped. And he said, well, you'll all find out what that means. 9/11 happened. That was the following Tuesday.
This just in, you were looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot.
We understand that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center.
Oh my God, another plane has just hit another building.
Oh my God.
See, the prophet is just a vessel. I don't get to be the interpreter, the translator. Sometimes I only get a chance to question it. I just say what I hear.
One of the things I've learned about Master Prophet, the Arch, America's black prophet of God, is he likes to talk, and he likes to take his time. So it takes patient listening, because he's going to go on, and he's going to go on, and he's going to go on. But everything that he's saying is pertinent information. So it's good to just carry a recorder and then play it over and over, because your patience might run out listening to him go on and on and on, Overton, 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 Overton again.
I had wrote a prophetic word to a woman about a month prior or so. And her name was Candace.
There was a young lady, Candace Young. She was a friend of my daughter's. She grew up in Philadelphia and she moved to New York City and she began to come here for service. She worked at that time at the Waldorf and she had sowed a seed.
In her prophetic word, when she sowed her seed, her word came to her that she should do no business on 9/11.
Well, what had happened is she had a already set up appointment to do some business on one of the towers on September 11th.
But that wasn't all. The business that she had to do was in Tower 1 that fell first.
She obeyed the written prophecy and says, I'm not going. Why? The prophet told me. So she canceled a 9 a.m. meeting, went to work at the Waldorf Astoria, standing on the roof of the Waldorf Astoria Hotel looking, saying, that's the building I'm supposed to be in. She would have been getting off the elevator about the time that plane hit the building.
We didn't realize until we got home, turning on the news, and this is what they was telling us, 911. And then Candace said, Bishop, you told me not to do business on 9/11. This was the day. This was the day that I was supposed to be there that early morning for my appointment.
And so when she got that prophetic word, she heeded the word and canceled her business appointment that she was supposed to have on 9/11, 9/11, and did not show up. And so when she sees the news at about 8:48, whatever the time that first building fell, she knew that that was the word of God, the Lord, because she was supposed to be in that building. Yet the word of the Lord came and told her, do no business on 9/11. You know what? And the word of the Lord is real.
Her obeying the word that she received literally saved her life, because it would have been around that time of when the planes hit the towers. And so for her, it was life-saving because she actually obeyed the word that she received.
What if she had not obeyed the prophetic word and took her hand up there to that tower? Now, that would have been a whole mess. Well, let's take it a little bit farther. What if she did not sow the seed so that the root word of seed, see, so that the seer could see for her seed? The girl would have been in a whole mess. You better find you a seed and put it in the hands of a seer so you can find out what the whole hell in the heaven is going on and about to happen in your life.
There's always been seers. I think a culture cannot survive without a seer. They cannot survive without a set of eyes. I think if you look at the film industry, let's look at that for a moment. There are people that see things that other people don't see and carry certain images and stories that other people don't see and carry. I think anybody that's in art can have the potential of a seer. I believe there can be musical prophets. They begin to reimagine a world that did not exist. Whether it was James Brown, we personally know that he had a seer that, kind of guided and spoken into his life. People that began to see a way, navigating a path. I think anyone that becomes a leader, when we begin to look at the former president, Ronald Reagan, he had astrologers that were in and out of the White House that was mapping things out. Even it's been documented that Joan Quimbley, who was the Reagan's personal astrologer, that when he got ready to be sworn in as governor, they did it at 12 midnight and they began to ask why. Well, during that time, Jupiter was rising. And when Jupiter is rising, kings are born. Anybody without a seer or prophet is running around in the dark without a flashlight. There's dangers that can begin to take place. But to have a seer is to have an advantage. And as I would always say to people, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king.
I was watching the Master Prophet on television and for some time, and then I kind of wondered, because it seemed to be real. I felt the anointing of God, but I wanted to check it out. At that time, he was given a free prophetic word, and he was going to send the CD and all of this. I said, oh. So I called in because I'm on national television. In fact, we were both on BET at the time. I didn't use my name. I used a fictitious name. And on television, I always used Houston, Texas. When I called in, I actually used my real address so I could make sure I got the CD. I got that CD, and I'm sitting in the car. I put it in, and I'm listening to this man prophesy to me. He says, I see you going to the mailbox. I see God blessing you through the mail, and you're helping the people through the mail. That's exactly what I was doing in ministry. I just screamed. I said, I'm done. This man is, he gonna prophesy to me and get it right and that accurate and do it. I was done. The fictitious name, who does that? Some prophets have to look you eyeball to eyeball and look you up and down and size you up in order for them to prophesy to him. And never seen me, didn't know who I was, but yet he was able to give me a word. In fact, that's what we were already doing. And then, of course, it got to be even greater because that's what the Master Prophet said, that it was going to even be greater than what it was at that time.
A lot of people are skeptical when it comes to the prophetic, especially the way that the Master Prophet does it. Give me your name, and then I prophesy to you. So I understand giving him a fictitious name. But the thing is this is not a looking at your letters of your name, and there's an art to that, and that is prophetic. But he literally listens to what God says and repeats what God says. And if God said it, then it is always so.
I think a prophet is one that can read the times that they're in and the era that they are functioning in and where God wants people to be in that time period. And sometimes a prophet can give individual messages or collective messages, but God gives certain people certain insight at certain time toward guiding in the flow of where God wants us at the time in history that he's put us on earth for.
A prophet of God is a man or a woman that God has given them the ability to be able to see into the future and be able to forecast and tell people and give them directions and answers for their life.
The prophet comes to comfort the uncomfortable and to make the uncomfortable comforted.
Prophets see and they point the way. Now, they may use literature, film, media, music in order to point to what is in the heart of God or what the heart of the matter is. It is extremely important that we support people that are prophets in film, prophets in media, prophets in literature, prophets that are on Broadway. It's important that we allow prophets to be extraordinary in their expression as they are pointing you to the heart of God or to the heart of the matter.
I thought it was the coolest thing I ever saw was Bishop. I mean, I knew what was going on. NWA was coming, all these groups were coming out, but I said, first of all, I was changing. I wanted to become a man. The Bible says when you're a kid, you do childish things. When you get older, you transform and you become a man. So for me, looking at Bishop, who was cool, who did all these things that were very filled with integrity, that became my new focus. And he never said, give away my possessions. It wasn't about taking a vow of poverty. So that was pretty cool too. It's like, all right, wow, prophet just picked up a Benz, Oh, snap, look at the prophet's home. Look at the way the prophet runs his life. This is cool. To me, I'm like, all right, so I'm not here to take a vow of poverty. I'm here to learn about becoming more prosperous than I was as Run DMC. And in the midst of becoming more prosperous, becoming more of a man. I mean, I'd get on every single time he'd say, stand, prophesy to lines of people. I'd get a prophecy every single time. So Those prophetic words would carry me through the week, through the month, through the years. Okay, this is gonna happen. And you believe the prophet and prosper, 2 Chronicles 20:20.
In 2 Chronicles chapter 20, verse 20, it says, believe in the Lord your God, so shall you be established. But then it says something else. Believe his prophets, so shall you prosper. Because when you believe the prophet is going to show you the most prosperous future of the door you can walk through. This is almost like process theology or process philosophy, that the future is always unfolding, but it's coming through multiple doors. You can either take the scenic route or you can take the direct route. Most people choose the scenic route. The prophet, again, shows you. You can either choose this or choose that. The children of Israel coming out of Egypt could have made it to the promised land in 40 days, but they've made it in 40 years. The question is, are you willing to do the work it will take for 40 days? Or are you going to take the 40-year package? We always get a package. Choose one.
Since this question was raised about 2 Chronicles, I've heard it a lot, even over the years, with the master prophet. I think some people shun it because they think it's a manipulative tool in the hands of the immature, perhaps in the hands of those gifted prophetically, but not sanctified for their office, perhaps. He's being liberated with this. It deals with Israel going into battle. And it is important to know that Israel as a people, when they had kings and governors and princes and all of this, that the prophets were assigned to kings. They were assigned to governors. They were assigned politically as part of that righteousness and justice to keep the nation centered. You got to see this Africanly. The musicians are gathered together, the priests are gathered, and the prophet is there with the leader. And as they begin to call for that prophetic word, here's what comes forth. Believe in the Lord. When you look at believe in its Hebrew origin, or as close to it as we can, it means to undergird. It means to support. It's kind of like a coming together. You see the whole tribal collective nature of it. It's a reciprocity there. I just saw it. If you would not just believe in terms of what I hear, and okay, I have faith. We know what you believe by the way you behave. So if you believe in the prophet, you're going to support that prophetic voice. You're going to support, you're going to undergird, you're going to surround, you're going to accept. And when they talk about, being established, it's the same Hebrew word. So if you support, undergird, embrace the prophet, so shall you be supported, undergirded, embraced. Okay? If you listen and adhere, you'll be established. That word establish means to break out, to be pushed forward, almost like literally catapulted or shot into another realm, shot into another dimension. And so prophetically, this is what is supposed to happen. It's not supposed to be, okay, I tell you a word, you believe God, and okay. No. This is a whole community. This is about a national victory. And so the prophet is tied to regional victories, familial victories, generational victories, national victories, international victories. And so there's a reciprocity there. There's a law there that if you would embrace and support and give to, then God will support and raise and give to you. And in that reciprocity, so shall we as a people, individually and collectively, be pushed forward, break out, upgraded, reset, reestablished.
You and I cannot reach the peak of our prosperity or the peak of our performance without a prophet. There is no other biblical leader that prosperity is attached to. If you are a political leader, if you're an entertainer, any creative, any role of leadership, you need a prophet so that you can be at the peak of your performance and reach the peak of your prosperity.
If I don't know how to do nothing else, I do know how to pray. But the Lord also uses me in the prophetic and television, radio, as well as I'm pastoring a church in Opelousas, Louisiana. The main television network that was the most successful for us was BET. And I attracted more sinners or non-Christians. I think there's a better way to say it than calling them sinners, because I don't know. But I came on right after Uncut, so I attracted that audience that was just coming in from the nightclubs, the rappers. I remember one time I met Young Jock, and he's cutting back and forth. Pastor Curtin, I can't believe it's Pastor Curtin. He said, we watch you every time you come on. We, in the studios all throughout the night. That's why I found out rappers don't sleep at night. They sleep during the daytime. He said, so anytime you come on, we shut everything down and we watch you. And every time you holler, God! He said, it just got excited. He said, will you say God for me the way you said? I have so many people try to imitate. I don't even know where that came from. I don't know how it started. And then after it started, I had so many preachers who say, you could be successful. You can have a great ministry if you just stop all that hollering God. But if people don't know my name, one thing they know that scream. I like to call it more of a holler. And it's an anointed holler.
I love that Kearney Thomas was doing something to get people to wake up that ended up being his signature. We all know him as a result of all that screaming, but he calls it the holy holler. In the church, we do and say things that outside of that box is very entertaining. And it can be the thing that God uses through you to get people to listen to you.
God! And they say how many people say, you woke me up, I was fast asleep. Then people have nerve. Why are you hollering? It's in the middle of the night. I gotta wake you up. I can't come on whispering. That's normally my reply. But that holler was anointed, because how you holler and scream, or whatever you want to call it, louder than the volume on somebody's television set. So their volume is set at one level, but the holler comes in even louder than that and able to wake them up. That's God, that's supernatural. So a lot of the rappers rapped about me. J. Cole put me in one of his albums that went platinum. Drake rapped about me. We had TV host Jimmy Kimmel almost talked about me at least once or twice every single week. Here's an interview with Reverend Jesse Jackson. He asked Reverend Jackson, do you know Pastor Kearney Thomas? And he gave that blank look and said, no, I don't know him, because he probably didn't know how to answer that. He said, well, you need to get to know him. He's the best preacher. So I wonder how that made Jesse feel.
I'm going to tell you what my pastor, Bishop Williams, taught me. He taught me you can't do no more ministry than you got money. And the more money that you have, the broader your scope of influence will be. You have money, you can do great things in ministry.
The Bible says, a poor man's word is not heard. Anyone in the Bible that word is heard, they are wealthy. Anyone in media that word is heard is wealthy. People are running shock about the people that led Black Lives Matter like they were supposed to be permanently poor. No, we hear their words every day. Their words print money. They are wealthy. When you have the ears of tens of thousands, millions of people, you are wealthy.
We were called the Money Church. There were BMWs, Mercedes-Benz, there was Rolls-Royce, there were trucks, there was people were wearing fur coats and diamonds and suits and gaiters, $1,000 shoes. And yeah, this is the Money Church. And we do talk about money. And the thing is that the people that don't talk about money, they probably don't have any and they probably won't get any. conversations about wealth that we didn't have at our dining room or kitchen tables, conversations that were not spoken in our individual households were spoken here at the ministry, and that's where the spark happened. That's where we got the ideas that we could do so much more with the life that we have, that it was literally possible, it was tangible. You could reach out and touch it.
I don't know where this whole concept of money being a problem in the African American community came from. It sounds like it comes from our oppressor that came to Africa and gave you a Bible while they were stealing your gold. And has anybody ever asked the question, how did their gold get under your land? That's the power of the oppressor. They always want you to buy into heaven, but don't buy into the gold that heaven is giving you now.
Now, this is the reason why that they killed Bishop Jordan in the media. Because in the spirit of his mentor, Reverend Ike, he began to teach Black people about money, which meant that he was bringing liberation. People began to see how those around Bishop Jordan, under his teaching, that they began to get houses, land, revenue, wealth, cars, and things, real and personal property. And now there is an issue. Let me tell you something. When Black folk start getting money and they start coming up above the scratch line, white folk get bothered. And that was the thing that caused them to kill this Black man, say he a witch, say that he after your money, whatever. So folk will stop listening to the liberator.
The money. Show me the money. Let me preface the prosperity or the financial side of ministry with this. I did not go into the ministry to get rich. I got rich doing ministry. It was far beyond me. I never saw the wealth. I never saw the money coming. But because I did real ministry, and I have preachers ask me, did you go into ministry to get rich? I got rich just purely doing ministry. And when I think about somebody like the Master Prophet, he had a heart for the people. He wanted to see the people got blessed. So the people give into that and sow into it. And today, that's a real problem that's going on with the Black preachers that are preaching prosperity. How can you even be a Christian and not preach the message of prosperity? They've hidden it from us. First of all, Jesus was rich. You know, they want to say that Jesus was poor. And I had an image of Jesus for years of this white boy, straggly beard, straggly long hair, old dirty looking robe, walking down the street with some old flip-flops on or something. That was my image because that's the picture that they showed us. But when you begin to look at Christ, when he was on, he didn't hang out with poor people. He hung out with the rich. Zacchaeus, come on down the tree. I'm going to your house for dinner. Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, they were rich people, had big houses. All of his disciples that he called to walk with him, they were all successful men. And then we had a conversation just the other night about which one of the disciples were poor, and everybody jumped on Peter. Peter was poor. Well, he owned his own ship, so he couldn't have been too poor. He not only owned his own ship. If you look at the 4th chapter of the book of Luke, before the ship experience, we know he had a house because Jesus went to Simon Peter's house. And then let's say for argument's sake that he was poor. He didn't stay poor long because Jesus told him to launch out in the deep, let down your net for a drought. He caught so much fish that day that his ship began to sink. So that lets us know right there that we should have blessings of God, financial blessings of God, overflowing in our life.
Jesus chose 12 men. He says it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to be saved. All 12 of his disciples got upset. It says, who then among us can be saved? Because all of the disciples of Jesus were wealthy. See, we've got to get out of our mind this Eurocentric character of Jesus as he was poor, walking on dusty roads because he couldn't afford sandals. Jesus' garments, they were casting lots for his garments because of the value of his clothing. Jesus had a treasurer that was stealing money, and yet Jesus never missed a beat, by the name of Judas. And not only that, but they gave large sums of money at his resurrection to tell a lie that he had not risen from the dead. Jesus was a very, very, very wealthy person, probably more wealth than they could actually count. Money is the power of God seeking manifestation.
A wealthy Black American is what liberation from white, racist, European Christianity looks like. God is glorified when Black people are no longer praying about money.
The master prophet is extraordinary. That would encompass all of what he is.
I got a prophecy hanging over me right this second. He gave me on my birthday that's happening right now. He wrote me on the day before my birthday recently. This is just like November 13th, as I was flying home, he's like, happy birthday, Rev. Here's your yearly prophecy. And I'm like, I'm scared of Bishop. I'm like, why he writing me? Like, he writes me because he loves me still, Like, okay, I gotta carry this prophecy. I can't turn it was good, but I was like, I gotta look at it. So what he said, whether I liked it or didn't like it, which I do like it, is all happening right now.
I can say that he's been 100% accurate with me and the things that I've heard him say, both collectively, universally, and to me personally. He's never told me anything personally that didn't end up that way. And that's the power of prophecy.
Born and raised in Brooklyn on these streets. Mama said, don't you cry, you got all you need. A gift inside to set the people free. You don't have to understand, in time you see. Looking back, I reminisce about it. Never thought I'd be America's Black prophet. You're giving me power to heal. I can see, I can hear you, I can feel. Vision only getting stronger when they turn the lights out. What was hard to understand, that's all I know now. Vision on the other side that surpasses all doubt. Leading from the future and beyond now. Hold on to my faith and I'll receive. You prepared a table before my enemies. Covered by your blood, I've been redeemed. A gift inside to set the people free. You're giving me power to heal. I can see, I can hear you, I can feel. Vision only getting stronger when they turn the light.
feeling the divine call to the prophetic? Are you eager to hear God's voice and speak with divine wisdom? Are you seeking the spiritual realm in a higher dimension? Are you tired of religion and need more? Do you have dreams? Well, look no further. Your journey starts right now. Unlock the power of the prophetic with Dr. Prophet Anthony D. Shannon, a prophet you can trust. See, a prophet is an individual who is believed to have a direct and special connection with the divineness of God, or at least a higher spiritual realm to hear from God. In Ephesians 4:11, we're reminded that God has sent forth apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers to perfect the saints. In this fourth industrial revolution, man, the prophetic is more crucial than ever before. We're here to guide you on this extraordinary path. 2 is better than 1. And a threefold cord is not easily broken. So choose Kingdom Prophets USA. Why choose Kingdom Prophets USA? It's a company of prophets, ordained and sanctioned by the esteemed Dr. Master Prophet Archbishop Eben R. Jordan and POEM, the prophetic order of Mar Elijah. Join a community of believers committed to spiritual growth, to transformation of thought, and to receive their prosperity. Learn how to navigate and matriculate the challenges of this technology and AI of the fourth industrial revolution with divine wisdom. Connect with like-minded individuals on a journey of faith that can catapult you and be a strength for you as you grow. Are you ready? Then say yes. Are you ready to take the next step? Then say yes. I invite you right now to reach out to us. Here's several ways. Text "Pray for Me" to 54244 for a divine conversation. That's text PRAY 4ME to 54244. Or visit us at www.thevictorychurchint.org. Click on the prophetic link for more information. Or call 734-413-7740 to speak with our dedicated team. Again, that number 734-413-7740. Call now. Your calling into the prophetic is waiting on your yes. Embrace it today. Kingdom Prophets USA. Your destiny is calling. It's calling your name, because destiny is not left up to chance. It's a matter of choice. Make the choice and say yes, and close out this invitation by reaching out to us. I'll see you soon in the prophetic. Kingdom Prophets USA.
I gave him back to God when he was a little boy. I gave him back to God. Back to God. But I just thank God that I was obedient to let him go.
Oftentimes, the minute you hear the word prophet, some people would suggest there are no prophets. And then there are those who assume a particular calling and mantle for the affirmation of the prophetic responsibility. The prophet speaks the truth. A prophet has to speak toward justice.
Some of y'all go to your bathroom, get a razor, shave your eyebrows completely off, then get a pencil and draw brand new eyebrows. What's that all about?
My name is Craig Figueredo. People call me Fig. I'm a professional comedian. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy, Crown Heights, Flatbush. I lived in Brooklyn all my life, and that's where I met the Master Prophet in the early years.
I am George Gary John Derek Bloomer. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, 453 Columbia Street, apartment A, B, and C. I was raised in the South Brooklyn Seventh-day Adventist Church, worshipped on Saturdays. A lady moved into the projects in apartment 6E. Her name was Ganame Rango, and everything she had on was white. White shoes, white stockings, white dress, and a white prayer dolly on her head. She would be playing music. Now, I came from the SDA church. In that church, we sang, "My faith looks up to thee, thou Lamb of Calvary, Savior divine." Well, her church was singing that, and something was triggered on the inside of me. So I started going to this church, and the church could not hold the people. After that Easter, they was announcing that they're having a tent crusade on Eastern Parkway and Hopkinson Avenue. And this pastor put up a circus tent that set 3,000 people. It was just unbelievable. And he had a 300-voice choir. And we went there, and this in the tabernacle, they're singing, and people fainting and feeling the presence and the power of God. You know, I'm drawn in. Because as long as I'm in the presence of God, it sort of kind of manages this whole drug thing that I'm dealing with. And young people gravitated to this man of God. His name was Apostle Johnny Washington. And when the tent crusade was over, we went back to Glenmore Avenue, and the church was too small to hold what he had drawn from the tent crusade. So he started renting out Friendship Baptist Church on Herkimer Street, Nostrand and Herkimer in Brooklyn for Sunday night services. And we went over there, and that's where I saw Bernard. They threw us on the choir without our permission. You know, everybody was on the choir.
But one of the enduring features of the Black church tradition is that of the choir. Choirs are the instruments by which the parishioners are led into the presence of God. They charge the atmosphere. They create a kind of atmosphere that is conducive for the supernatural. So much of the spirituality within the Black church is carried by the music. One would not think much of organizing a worship service when you didn't have the choir ready to lead you in the praise and worship of God.
When I told the apostle that I was called to be a prophet, he says, join the choir. And I said, the choir? He said, yes, because if you're going to prophesy, you're going to have to learn how to project your voice. I says, okay, then I'll join the choir. And it was the choir that gave my voice the volume that it needed. Because in those days, when we prophesied in a room of 3,000 people, you were given no mic. So you had to project your voice. The church would go silent. And then the voice begins to arise, and it's the utterance of the Lord.
I think I got saved when I was about 17 years old. One of my friends in the neighborhood started going to church. And before I knew it, I started meeting like young saints all over the place. It was a whole group of us, and we used to go to different churches. And we ended up at this church way out in Queens. And I believe that's the first place where I ever saw Bishop. I didn't know him, but that's the first place where I saw him. And he stood up in the midst of the congregation and he prophesied during a service.
In those days, the prophetic was not what it is today. The prophetic was like Corinthians. If you're going to prophesy, there need to be one or two or the most three to witness and to verify. So a person would get up and they would pray in tongues. And then across the room, another person would get up and speak in tongues. And on the other side of the room, someone would stand up and say, "Thus saith the Lord." And from the pulpit, the pastor would hush the congregation to hear what God was saying.
There was a handful of people that could stand up in a church and prophesy. Pastors didn't go for that. They would sit you down. If you thought you was a prophet and you wasn't, they would tell you to shut up. Shut up, sit down, don't say nothing in this service. And if you continued to do something like that, they would have the deacons or adjutants at the time, they would come to your seat, pick you up, and physically remove you from the church if you was acting like you was a prophet and you actually wasn't. Shut up, that's not from God, sit down. So in order for you to prophesy, not only did you have to have nerve, you had to be convinced that the word that you was gonna give was from God and that it was the proper time to do it, because at that time there was a lot of churches that didn't even allow prophets, like none. So this whole phenomenon about prophecy is fairly new and very few people could do it.
The move of the Spirit in the Black church is something to be envied and literally has been copied all around the world. The transcendent experience that happens amongst Africans is amazing. The syncopation between our preacher, the choir, and the musicians sets the atmosphere for an electric, fiery move of the Spirit amongst the people. This was amazing and happened all the time in the Black church, still happens sometimes today. Sometimes there would be people that would jump up and they would be filled with a message from the Lord. And it would be so encouraging, so enlightening, and so insightful. But as people began to people, some of those messages were not so easily received because they were filled with correction and rebuke. And when this began to happen, pastors began to press down upon the prophetic voices because the words were not something that they wanted to hear, and it did not promote church growth and really mess with how the church was viewed collectively. Bishop Bernard Jordan found out what it was to be one of those people, to have a message that was great, that he was praised for, and then a message that wasn't so great, that he suffered as a result.
Back in the 70s and in the 80s, we believed that God was going to come within that year. We lived our life as if God was going to come that year. We repented all of the time. When the altar calls were open, if we had a bad thought, we were running, crying, running down the aisles to the altar, giving our life to Jesus every single day because we believed in God that way. That's what was preached to us. And in those old classical Pentecostal churches, that's exactly what goes on. Jordan didn't believe it like that. And he would start asking questions. How come only Pastor Patterson prophesies in this church? So one day, tongues went forth in that house. And I'm sitting 3 rows behind Jordan. And tongues went forth in that house, and he stood up and started in the tongue turn. One side, da, 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 and the other one goes in song, da, 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 and there's got to be a third, da, da, and then the interpretation. And he goes forth and he da, 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 speaks down, sits down. Third person speaks, but no one gets up to interpret. And Jordan stands up and starts speaking about the church, about the success of it, what God was going to do, how God was going to grow it. He began to prophesy, and for whatever reason, prophecy that he gave that day moved him from being a little boy, moved him from the choir, and placed him in a position in the heart of the pastor as someone that he can trust prophetically.
And in Brooklyn Tabernacle, Bernard Jordan was one of the few that would be able to stand up and to give a prophecy and it be received as a word from the Lord. And that was exciting because to me, as a new Christian, I had never seen anything like that before. So it was absolutely amazing.
Apostle C.R. Johnson, he was starting the church in Brooklyn as well, and we joined the church. And what was so amazing is that we were the first couple Pastor C.R. Johnson married in the church. Not only that, but at the time, my husband was also one of the first ministers that was ordained at the church. And I can remember that evening, the church was full of people and stuff, and a lot of people, they was excited. They knew my husband, that he was a prophet, but now an ordained minister.
This wasn't the same Bernard Jordan that we see today. This is eons ahead today than what it was back then, because back then, he didn't wear the money that he made, because Bishop used to dress, let's just say, his designer of choice was Polly and Esther. You had to have variety. You couldn't just wear black all the time. You couldn't wear brown all the time. So he ventured out and got a lime green suit. And he wore it a lot. Sometimes the pants were a little on the high side, and we could tell that he wore white tube socks and the black shoes. He was sort of like Michael Jackson before Michael Jackson, in the sense of you could see his socks when he put a suit on. This is all true, y'all. This is all true.
I had no color socks. I wore tube socks everywhere. I would sit in the pulpit with white tube socks and dress shoes.
Who gets married in tube socks and tails? That is the question.
On my wedding day, I wore white tube socks and dress shoes.
The people never said anything.
I showed Michael Jackson how to dress. Now, to me, that's the power of prophecy.
I took the position as why, leave it alone. And in the fullness of time, it will work itself out. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Now, listen, I don't know how the prophet was dressing back then, but look at him now.
What they didn't know is that Jordan wasn't a part of the old prophetic crew or team. He was sort of kind of figuring out where his dreams and visions and voices were coming from. While he wants to be obedient, he's young, and the mind of the ministry is that we have a young prophet and no one else has this, and we have this. So they have their doll that they can showcase. He's trying to find himself. That's a dangerous position to be in. So one Friday night, Jordan gets up and breaks the rule of how prophecy is supposed to happen. There's 2,500 people on the floor. Friday nights was jammed, and Jordan does not wait for the first prophet or the second one or the third prophet. He gets up, he speaks in tongues. The hush falls over the entire place. That's the order of things. And he's supposed to wait for the next person to prophesy. And before the other person speaks in tongues, Jordan gives the interpretation of the tongues that he's speaking and nails it, hits it right on. Wait a minute, how is this? That you can speak in tongues and prophesy? Well, what he was speaking about is what was happening to this ministry, this movement, who Johnny Washington was, and how God was going to open up doors and things would happen. So this is working. So now we're seeing in this service, something happens here that changes the game. It's an outlier. It's something that is different. Everyone else was prophesying this way. This guy comes here and he's able to speak in tongues and give the prophecy without waiting for anyone to witness or to bear witness of what's said, and nail it.
To say, thus saith the Lord, or I hear the word of the Lord, or I hear the Lord saying. The words that follow are not my words, that I'm not speaking on my own behalf, but these are words that come from God, or come from the presence of the Lord. And they listen with another degree of intensity because they do not want to miss the voice or the word of the Lord.
I'm hearing this, yea, the Lord, yea, the... Okay, the minute we hear prophecy, especially back then, everybody shuts down. You're not walking, you're not talking, I don't even think you're chewing gum. And I looked to my left and I saw the young prophet speaking very thin. He seemed very put together. He had the Bible in his hand. He had a black suit on, a black tie, and a white shirt, and he started prophesying. I was a little surprised because I'd never seen a young black prophet prophesying the way that God used him and brought him forth. And he spoke with class, he spoke with intelligence, and always with clarity.
And I remember Sister Rangel coming, she said to me, she says, you know, I was in the prayer meeting with Apostle Washington, all of them, and they said that man, he's very, very gifted. He's gifted. And I said, who? Jordan? She said, yes, he's very, very gifted. She says, but George, you know what they say? He's very, very gifted, but you got to control him. They having discussions about this 19-year-old, 20-year-old guy in the back room about what he's doing. They're nervous, they're afraid, they're scared that the one that sees may actually see them. And will he say what he sees? And if he says what he sees, how strong is this ministry and church going to be? And their fears came to pass. This guy was sold out to God. They couldn't control. He kept on hearing voices, kept on seeing things, and so on and so forth. Now, I don't want to get in trouble, but it is said that the way you check a person's credit is by checking their history. So you can follow what I'm saying. He comes to the church and he says, there's a plague coming to America, and it's going to hit the church. And we need to protect ourselves, and we need to arm ourselves, and we need to live a righteous and sanctified life because there's a plague that is coming. He spoke that and just waved it off. A year later, we hear about this plague that's coming. If you check the history, the plague started in the 70s, but they didn't mention it until the 80s. It was HIV. And then he went on to say, if we do not honor God and stop the foolishness that's going on inside this church, God is going to start at 1 and end at 30. The plague is coming to this house.
Can you imagine being the bearer of bad news, standing up to give a word like you have many times before that everybody praised you for, and now you're having to give a message that everybody's not receiving? And you're giving this message from God, and now God's people are treating you bad. So it's like you're torn between God's people, God's message, and you're being ripped apart. I cannot imagine how a young prophet Bernard Jordan was feeling. To bear bad news and then receive treatment when your intention is to give to you what God is saying had to be very difficult for him.
Pastor stood up, said enough is enough. Signal to the security people to go and get him out of that seat and drag him out of that church. Now, nobody told me this. I was there. And they left his Bible in the chair, and the guy came back, got his Bible, threw his Bible up the aisle, picked the Bible up off the floor, threw it up the aisle again, picked it up the floor, and went out the door, threw the Bible out the door. They were that angry that they mishandled the word of God. Well, if you're going to mishandle the prophet, which is the mouth of God, no problem. Mishandle the word of God. The plague hit the church. It started at 1, and when it ended, 30 individuals had succumbed to that plague.
I went after service and told the apostle, says, listen, I love you. Just doing the things that you've taught me and speaking forth the word of the Lord. And the apostle said, so what? Your word has come to pass. He was upset. And that was the last time I saw the apostle in the pulpit. And then the next time I saw the apostle, I was home praying, and the Lord spoke to me and says, go to this particular hospital in Long Island. And when I walked in, it says, you must be here to see the apostle. Just go to this particular room. And I went. And all of the ministers were sitting around the bedside. It was about 30 or 40 ministers. I just came in and sat. He couldn't speak, evidently had a stroke of some type, but he was not cognizant. I made peace within myself during that time. All I could think about was the last conversation that I had with the apostle, an experience I had in the church. And then after that, he shortly passed away. And I haven't even talked about this. Really, I'm now wondering if it's something that is really unprocessed. I was just a young minister, still at a local church serving. But here's a church I grew up in, and I watched people's lives that were healthy, lives end, and they were taken out by HIV and AIDS, and it was dropping one after the other. It was like every week there was another death. And it started from the pulpit all the way to the door, just as the word of the Lord was spoken.
Quoted in Deuteronomy 18 and 22, we find out something that is very important. Now, when a prophet says he see and speaks, and that thing don't come to pass, the Bible tells us here, do not be afraid of him. But when a prophet speaks and what he says and what he sees comes to pass, that prophet, we should honor that prophet who speaks and says, and what they say and what they see comes to pass. Prophet Jordan is a prophet to be honored.
Faith Fellowship Church was new, and the pastor was Pastor David E. DeMola. They were Italian. That's where we saw this black man and this black woman who were on a stage, and they were called the prophets to this church. That's where I met Bernard and Deborah Jordan.
And there was a buzz that was going around throughout the Christian community in the area. There's this Bernard Jordan. There's this Bernard Jordan. He's teaching intercessory prayer. You've got to go hear him. You've got to go. So there was this excitement that something was happening, that God was doing, and his name was Bernard Jordan. So that's kind of what drew a lot of us to Faith Fellowship because of what we were hearing that was happening.
These prophets that came out on stage when they were introduced stood there together like twins, and they prophesied together. And when they prophesied to the church and to the people in the church, it just changed everyone's life. Intercessory prayer began with Bishop Jordan. You didn't hear anything about that. It was not a part of anybody's church. And so he started that, and it became a really big thing. It swept the country. The church was packed. People were out the door and around the corner.
The awesomeness of it was that he was a great teacher. Yeah, that's what really kind of got this ball rolling. Not only was he accurate in his prophetic, he was a great teacher. And the teaching was so strong with wisdom, it challenged the system in the church community. Now we have it that there's this young black man, and I need to say it with strength, this young black, intelligent young man, Prophet Jordan, who is not only prophesying with wisdom, he teaches with authority, and he searches the scripture to make sure that he's on point.
We had a large auditorium, and when the intercessory rooms that they had set aside could no longer hold the people who came, everything moved to the main auditorium, and it probably filled it up. So we were excited because this was a move of God. God was moving, we were growing, we were learning, we were experiencing God. And what caught my eye was the pastor. I was more towards the back because I was a little late getting there. And I saw him walking around like in a circle at the back. And at first I thought, oh, he's so excited too. You know, he's excited with us. But then I realized that his face was angry, and he wasn't walking, he was pacing around in a circle with this anger, which I had not seen his face ever look like that. So you knew, okay, wait a minute, something's wrong.
It looked like it was their church, and that brewed a jealousy that I had never seen coming from men and women of God who were opening the door to the move of God. And that's when the hush began to be a little bit of noise and rumbling.
They sought to control Prophet Jordan in a very unique way because he's a giving person. And here is this young man, Prophet Jordan, who was believing beyond, dreaming beyond, his visions were beyond, and all it was is that he was accepting the call of God to go deeper into what he knew God had called him into.
After the service was over, they approached him and they began to demand certain things that he should no longer do. He should no longer feel free to just flow in the Spirit, even to say that he couldn't just follow the way the Holy Spirit led. But now you're going to have to cut this down. You're going to change your ways. You're going to have to do it differently, because they weren't pleased with the growth. I can't say what the pastor was feeling, but it was because it was drawing even those beyond the church into this experience. And they couldn't control what was going to happen after that. And so they began to demand certain things of him that Friday night. And by Sunday, they had him stand up in the church and announce to everybody that he was leaving. And he was to tell them why he was leaving. And then Pastor Deborah and Archbishop got to the front, and they were very young at the time. We were just young people, not really understanding what was going on or what was driving this. And he said that, you know, he was sorry, he would have to leave. They didn't care where he went, but he wasn't coming back there.
They were so young and humble that they were just going with what God was doing. They weren't trying to do anything. What was really happening for me in my eyes was that they were bringing in a lot of offerings because the people were coming. But they didn't realize that they were bringing a move of God that was going to change the life of the people sitting there. The church wanted the money, but they didn't really know how to handle those who were drawing people to come to that space. They didn't know how to handle them. They were very weighty in the ministry, and they didn't even know it. Bernard and Deborah Jordan had no idea who they were, and neither did we.
That church never celebrated our gift. We never got a penny for teaching there. We never got anything for doing services there. And neither did we ask for it. We did it out of the joy of our heart. And I stayed on my job at the post office, work at the post office at 12 midnight, drive out to Staten Island, teach that 10 o'clock Bible study, take a nap at someone's home there in New Jersey, and then teach that evening class, and then go straight back to the post office to work with 2 small children. That was our love for the ministry.
After he left Faith Fellowship, he did maybe return there to see if he could maybe just make peace, if you will. And the pastor told him to go back to Africa. It was an actual statement. That's where your ministry is, and that's where you need to go.
I never would believe that a man of God would act like this. But he said it, and he was so angry that he didn't care. And when they opened the door and had them leave, that's when he said, and go back to Africa.
Find time to tell me to go back to Africa. After I fought in your wars, all of them, suckled your babies, shined your shoes, have been raped, and beaten and been your strange fruit. I am a descendant of the survivors. Find time to tell me to go back to Africa.
That was a strange thing. I'm going like this. My eyes is getting real big. What's going to happen next? You know, I can't believe this is happening. Well, it can't be this bad. We've come too far. I learned right then we had not come far enough, because for him to be able to tell him to get out, he said, you can go back to Africa for all I care. I believe when I was in church that day, I cussed because I could not believe that happened. I didn't cuss aloud. I was like many of the saints. I cussed in my mind. Hallelujah.
Larry Reed. Now, if I was there, I would have cussed for real. It wouldn't have been in my mind. See, prophets have a divine draw, and people will feel drawn to them, and they will feel compelled to give because the prophet is connected to prosperity. And anytime you bless a prophet, there's an exchange that go along that is mind-blowing. And that draw that prophets have, people start coming. And that irritated that man. Back to Africa, he was out of order. I wish I had been there.
There was a young lady, she had a lot of little children, and she was one of the members. And so Bishop Jordan would come down from New York to New Brunswick area, and he would visit us, just wanted to check on us and see how we were doing. And so, I guess this was 1980 or 1981, he told Sadie, under no circumstances should she get back with her husband, and she should not let him back in the house. And he didn't give her a reason why. He told her that God said not to let him back in the house.
I will never forget that, because I worked in the hospital when I saw this woman. He didn't even know if she had a husband who was even in prison. He just said, someone here has a husband who is in prison and is going to be coming home. He called her out, she came up, he ministered to her, and he said, listen, I know that that's your husband, but when he comes home, do not sleep with him. Do not let him come back. And he came back, and she did. And I will never forget, it might have been 6 months later. She was one of my patients. And when I walked into the room and I saw her, she was hiding under the cover. And I said to her, can I get you anything? The prophecy came back to me, and she peeked her head out of the covers, and she said, the prophet told me not to.
She got AIDS from taking him back in, and ultimately he died, and ultimately so did she. I spoke with her just shortly before she passed, and she was saying that how sorry she was that she didn't listen. She just couldn't understand why she should, and that particular word cost her her life.
We didn't know why she was not supposed to take her husband in. All we know is that that was the word of the Lord. It's just interesting. It was the word of the Lord, but she ignored that word, which she had every right to, and she took him in.
When a prophet is prophesying to you, they're serving your purpose, and they are doing everything they can in that moment to communicate whatever brings prosperity and the greatest outcome. I don't know why people think this can be negotiated. Listen to the prophet. You will be safe when you listen.
My name is Barbara Tucker. I am a recording artist of 39 years. House music is what I do. I've worked with many artists. I've worked with Shannon, who did Give Me Tonight. Some of the songs you may know me doing Deep Inside. This is a song that Kanye West sampled, or I Get Lifted. He sampled that too. Beautiful People, Precious Love. I've had like 6 #1 Billboard hits. I've had many Track Source hits, Beatport hits, and I traveled the world. To God be the glory, just molding me for a time, I gather, of the prophetic artist. It's really interesting because I never wanted to be a singer.
Barbara, you are lying. I'm just playing. No, I ain't. You lying. I'm just playing.
I don't know how these things happen, but these things were just really coming naturally to me. And I'm reminded, even at one point, in the heyday of my artistry, I did not want to sing anymore because I was so sold out for God. I just wanted to, I'll just sing in the church and I'll do this. But it's so funny because I wasn't used to prophetic words. Pastor Deborah, that's who I went to thinking those thoughts of, I'm just going to sing for the Lord, or I'm not going to sing in the community outside anymore. And she said, where I am is where I'm supposed to be, and don't leave.
We gave her a word from the Lord. Unbeknowing what she did, her profession at the time, told her keep doing what she was doing, because we believe that God always wants to enhance or make what you're doing even better. And told her, I hear the word of the Lord coming to me saying, don't stop, don't quit what you're doing, but keep on doing it.
When it comes to your prophetic purpose, I know you may have in your mind what you feel like you want to do and what you don't want to do, but hell, oh, can I say that?
Oh my goodness, this one prophecy, this is the kicker right here. Master Prophet said that he saw a foot in one country and a foot in another country. But then he saw a woman in her culture, in her native clothing, just doing turns and just spinning. Her skirt was long and she was just spinning and spinning. So about 2 days later, I received a call from one of my agents, and he said, Barbara, would you be interested in hosting an event, a party? It's a weekly party. It's in Ibiza, Spain. My mind went back to what the prophet was saying. Now, we know in Spain, the women would wear the scarves and they would wear the long skirts. And so that was the foot in Spain, in Europe, but then I was still over here in the US of A. What it turned out to be is every Sunday, Barbara Tucker Summer Soulful Jams at El Divino, and that went on for 4 months. So again, that's the prophetic word, the power of prophecy.
I remember that prophetic word as if it was yesterday. The skirt and the twirling around. And when I saw that in a vision, I gave that to her. We didn't know how that would even emerge. If Barbara would not have said yes to the word of the Lord to stay in the industry, then she would not have been able to fulfill her role and purpose in media, in radio, and to the house artists that are there in Ibiza and in all of Europe.
Prophets say what they are hearing and seeing. It really doesn't matter what you feel and what you think. If they say it and they have cited it and they speak it and articulate it, they activate it. And that is the power of prophecy.
If I was going to use one word, the word authentic, the origin of the word is authorized or authored, original. He is an original. He's not an impersonator. So when I say authentic, not only are his prophecies authentic, but his role as a prophet is unquestioned. I met the Master Prophet in the 80s. There was a prophetic conference that some prophets in my church asked to hold. And at that time, prophetic conferences or prophets were popular. They weren't even received. They were always looked at with suspicion, like, who do you think you are? So you have the word of the Lord in your mouth. We all have the word of the Lord of our mouth. Preachers would say that about prophets. But he was invited to the conference and was the most pronounced prophet who spoke in that conference. That's how I met it, through Pam Vanette and George Vanette. They asked me for my church. I got a lot of criticism and questions from people like Oral Roberts, James Roberts, and others. They were all saying, what's this prophetic conference? What are you doing? And I said, I'm not sure. I just feel like I'm supposed to do it. And I don't know that I actually attended the conference. I let them use my church as I was traveling a lot. But when I came back, they said the person who was the most outstanding and had the greatest impact was Prophet Eben R. Jordan. So I got to meet him and became instantly fond of him. Because when he prophesies, even then, he sort of demystifies it. He just talks to you prophetically, and he's just reading it. He doesn't have to get into some particular mindset and say, yea, thus saith the Lord, though I've heard him use that actual 16th century King's English. He'll just say things. said to my wife or my kids or my staff. He just started reading them and randomly. And one of the most pronounced prophecies is that when I first had him to come by himself, he prophesied that a young lady was going to get pregnant. Well, I knew that her tubes were tied, and she intentionally and her husband and them had a conversation with me about that. I told him after service, I said, that one lady, her tubes are tied, Doc. I'm not sure she'll. He said, that doesn't matter. Only what the Lord said. The child is now, I'm the godfather of that child, and the child is like 25 years old or something like that. I knew he was a true prophet, that he didn't show an ounce of instability or insecurity or fear. He knew it was, quote unquote, the word of the Lord.
But the Holy Spirit is interesting. He don't care what the reason is that you can't have one. There still can be a miracle that flies out of the prophet's mouth and lands into the person's belly. These are the miracles we see. This is not a magic show. It's the word of the Lord.
The prophet vocalizes it, makes it known, and it will come to pass. When he says it, it's done.
Drawing inspiration from the Azusa Street revival of 1906, Carlton Demetrius Pearson founds the Azusa International Denominational Fellowship. Within the context of this fellowship, Carlton Pearson and the fellowship grows to over 600 churches. But Carlton Pearson begins to have a conference every year, drawing some of the most prolific preachers, musical gifts in the American church. People who traditionally had gone to their own denominations' annual gatherings were bypassing those same gatherings, and they were heading in the thousands to Tulsa.
I think it was 1990, and one of my key speakers, who was an apostle with whom I had great relationship and great respect, didn't like the name of the conference and insisted that I change it. But we booked him again. He was powerful, from Africa, Bishop Idahosa. Big flowing robes and a big booming voice. And so he insisted on not coming, so I had to call my friend Miles Monroe a couple of weeks before the meeting and ask him if I sent him first class round trip ticket, would he come? And did he have that night off? Because he was very busy. Anyway, he flew in. And nobody knew he was going to be the keynote speaker that night. They were all expecting the apostle. The place was packed. The service was already late, gone a little longer, and I was a little bit itchy because Miles talks long. And but just before Miles got up, Bishop said, I have a word, the word of the Lord. He said that to me. And I hesitated. I started to say, can you wait till afterward? He said, no, I need to say it now. And he prophesied a message on Afrocentricism in Pentecost, about the role of the black man in the church, the role of the black man in history, church history, and American history. And Miles changed his message to purpose based on Bishop Jordan's prophecy. We were on live, TBN Live. That was the largest Christian television network on the planet. And neither Bishop Jordan knew we were on live nor Miles. But TBN's phones had more phone calls that night than in the history of the network. And Bishop Jordan, his prophetic word, changed the energy in the room, changed the message that came forth.
And you will begin to see the day that the oppressed shall carry my gospel and my name. For I've called thee here tonight to be eyewitnesses of that which I'm about to bring forth. For yea, this is just the seed. For yea, this is just the beginning. And out of this shall many come forth, saith the Lord. And many movements and many streams, saith the Lord. For even tonight I begin to do a work by my Spirit. So the Spirit of the Lord would say unto thee, lift up holy hands in my presence. For I send an anointing for you to go through the decade of the 90s. And I begin to anoint thee to cross over. For the baton is in thy hand. Run with it, run with it, run with it, and let it spread throughout the world. For it is a new day, it is a new beginning, and the charge has been given unto thee, saith the Spirit of the living God.
Had the people come down and pray for me. And it was at least 10,000 people in that place. And he just flowed under a prophetic anointing, but he was never rude. He was never arrogant. He flowed with respect for the leader of the meeting and with dignity and class It became globally prophetic. I'm most emotional thinking about that night, just because of what was said to me and what was said to that whole movement, and I'm living it now.
For you shall not lift up thine hands in thine own strength no more from this night forward. But as I've assigned men unto thee that are lifting now thy hands, saith the Lord, I bring them and join them unto thee.
We didn't know what that meant until Bishop Pearson's message changed and went in the direction of inclusion. And when he looked up, there was no one standing with him. He was standing by himself.
That prophecy changed Carlton's life. I played it on my platform. Shout out to Mike Williams. Pulled it from YouTube, and I began to dissect it. And I saw so many things. And in that prophecy that night, according to Bishop Jordan, he had people to hold his arms up. Ladies and gentlemen, we failed Bishop Carlton Pearson. We did not see clearly the prophetic demonstration that was alongside of that word. I cannot believe how accurate this prophecy was, decades ahead, carving out the life that Carlton would live and what he will leave here in the earth. Wow, that's the power of prophecy.
Word, this is the only word I didn't like from the master prophet. It was personal. When he told me in private that Azusa would end prematurely, it would crash, and it did. That was before the gospel of inclusion, which got me and my whole ministry in trouble. I didn't accept it. I didn't receive it. I heard it, and when I get to the place where I don't receive it, I know it's right, and because it ticks me off. And he said it in the most beautiful spirit. He had a little smile on his face, but he was very direct.
The Lord spoke concerning the ending of this Azusa movement. And when that word came, it wasn't so gladly received. I mean, here you're telling someone, here's the death certificate of your baby, and you still got your baby going. Who wants to hear that? But that's what the prophet does sometimes. Bring you to something, because one of the things you'll begin to discover in this spiritual walk with God is that all knowledge has an expiration date. But not only all knowledge, even most things has an expiration date, and the prophet comes to announce, get ready, because it's getting ready to expire, and you're going to have to move into the next season of your life.
Bishop prophesied publicly that if I wasn't married by the end of my 40th year, I would never be married. I didn't like that either, but I started working out and trying to get in shape when I was 39. And 6 months into my 40th year, I got married. I'd only known her 3 weeks. She's the mother of my 2 children. I trust his prophecy.
Now, when you receive that prophecy, you have to walk that word out. So you get it here, it's fulfilled there, but that middle passage, you got to stay mindful of the word and make sure you're making decisions, changes, and alterations and choices that align with the fulfillment of that prophecy. And more than anything, you must keep the faith and believe.
It's important to note that when I went through my shift 20 years ago, and the whole church announced me and denounced me as a card-carrying heretic, everybody fled. He's one who didn't. Not only did he refuse to, but he came to the church. My crowd was down from thousands to hundreds, and he came every month for almost a year and checked on us. He raised money, and he knew I was out of money. He knew I had a young marriage, which he prophesied. He would fly me and my whole family up here to New York, just randomly, and feed us, give us huge honorariums, not only just me, but my wife, my children. He wasn't ashamed to be associated with me. He introduced me to Reverend Ike. I didn't know Reverend Ike had been sending letters to the Christian magazine that was hounding me. They put my face or name in the largest charismatic, in fact, that was the name of the magazine, Charisma. I don't care if they knew. That was the largest in circulation at that time. They put my name or face in it every month for a solid year. to kill my conference, and they were successful at killing the conference. I mean, our crowds were down. We had 350 buses canceled. When I went before that tribunal of the African American Pentecostal College of Bishops or whatever it was, he went with me. He was sitting in the audience. They wouldn't let him come in the back with me. Nobody could come in the back with me. But I was looking for him the whole time. They were just beating me up, and I could see him there. And he had this look of reassurance. He went to the hotel with me. We ate together that night, and he stuck with me. It was very unpopular to do that. It could have hurt his ministry, and it did. People start tagging him with me. He didn't care, because he knew the prophet sometimes could see whether that not just the light at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes they can actually see the end of the tunnel, and he did. And he just stuck with us several times. He would have us in and out, and I mean, he's the most generous friend I have or know. He just finds if somebody's sick, somebody's hurting, somebody's lacking, somebody's in trouble, he's the first guy to get there, whether they invite him or not. He's very loyal to his friends and sometimes to his enemies. He's a man that doesn't just operate in the gifts. He has the fruits of the Spirit. Some of the most gifted people that I know don't have the fruits of love and joy. He carries the gift, not just prophecy, because all the 9 gifts: word of knowledge, word of wisdom, discerning of spirits, prophecy. But people who are gifted lack the fruit so much. That's my biggest disappointment in my world of Christian preachers. But he's always made my soul proud, not just my mind. My spirit is proud of him because I've seen him operate in love in all the fruits, including endurance and pain. He's a perfect example of the Christ Spirit.
Bishop Pearson, when he came to do the documentary, he poured his soul out here. We didn't know that he was getting ready to exit. There was no signs of it in the air. He talked seemingly for hours, interviewing. A lot of the interview, I didn't even get the chance to even see myself. He was telling them stories about the prophetic. And then one day the Holy Spirit says, call him. And when I called him, I said, just call my name, I'll be there. He says, Bishop, come. And I jumped on the next plane and went to see my friend. And he sat up in the bed, and Larry Reed met me there, and he talked to us for hours like he was full of strength. The last interview that he gave. And when I saw that he was about to be put away, we could not let the bones of this man be left in a state as if he was just a common man. This is a prince of the church, my friend, Bishop Carlton D. Pearson.
Born and raised in Brooklyn on these streets. Mama said, don't you cry, you got all you need. A gift inside to set the people free. You don't have to understand, in time you see. Looking back, I reminisce about it. Never thought I'd be America's black prophet. You're giving me power to heal. I can see, I can hear you, I can feel. Vision only getting stronger when they turn the lights out. What was hard to understand, that's all I know now. Vision on the other side that surpasses all doubt. seat. You prepared a table before my enemies. Covered by your blood, I've been redeemed. A gift inside to set the people free. You're giving me power to heal. I can see, I can hear you, I can feel. Vision only getting stronger when they turn the lights out. What was hard to understand, that's all I know now. Vision on the other side that surpasses all doubt. Leading from the future and beyond. Whoa. That's all I know now. That's all I know now. That's all I know now. The prophet. That's all I know now. Prophet. The prophet. The prophet. Prophet. The prophet. Vision only getting stronger when they turn the lights out. What was hard to understand, that's all I know now. Vision on the other side that surpasses all doubt. Leading from the future and beyond now. Leading from the future and beyond now. That's all I know now. That's all I know.
And I went for the sonogram. And they said I was 12 weeks pregnant. And that was exciting news that I had for him when he came home from work. I got the phone call. And they asked to speak to Miss Jordan. They said, you need to come to St. John's Hospital. We have somebody here. And your name was in their wallet.
Eric had came in contact with the police. He was not selling cigarettes. He was just breaking up a fight.
Right there, I knew it was him because he didn't call. So I called Mother Jordan and I said, John's at the hospital. When I got to the hospital, I checked his vital signs.
I learned how cruel police can be. They disregarded their life.
He was gone. They never made him.
Thank you for joining us here at the Victory Church International, where we are leading from the future. And after such an impactful and empowering word, it is now time to sow. That's right, let's get our seeds in the ground. And here at the Victory Church, we sow on principle. Luke 6:38 tells us that if we give, God will cause men to give back to our bosom. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. That means that we're going to receive a multiplied return. So here at the Victory Church, we've made it easy. We have multiple ways for you to sow. And if you don't know, TTO is the way to go. You have an opportunity to sow directly into the prophet to get a blessing pronounced over your home.
Go ahead and sow your teruma today. And we've made it easy with 3 simple methods on sowing your teruma. First, we have Cash App. You can sow your teruma into the Cash App, $ Anthony D. Shannon. Or you can sow through PayPal. That would be paypal.me/Anthony D. Shannon21. Or you can sow your teruma seed through Zelle. Go ahead and sow your teruma seed now so that you can get a blessing pronounced over your home. And if you would like to sow your tithe, your offering, or your Levitical, and you want to sow into the Victory Church International, we have 5 ways for you to give.
Our primary method of giving is through the Victory Church International app. That's right, the Victory Church has an app. You can go to your Google Play Store or the App Store and search the Victory Church International. You will see our icon will pop up, and once you download it, open the app and tap the menu icon. Once you tap that icon, select Give, and you can give your gift right there. Go ahead and download our app today.
You can also give through the Victory Church website, thevictorychurchint.org, and look for the Giving tab. You can also sow to the Victory Church's Cash App, $the Victory Church INT. The Victory Church also has a Zelle. You can find us at vtvicc@icloud.com. And there you can sow your offerings through Zelle. Or you can sow through Venmo. If you have Venmo, go ahead and find us at Anthony-Shannon-24.
Remember, sowing is a work of the heart, not grudgingly, not of necessity. So I urge you now, be a cheerful giver. Whatever God has laid on your heart, go ahead and sow it now. Are you giving? Go ahead and give. And at this time, we want to thank you for your support. Thank you for watching, for tuning in, for your seeds, for your prayers. We thank you, and we are blessed to serve people like you. Well, thank you for joining us here at the Victory Church, where we are leading from the future.
And don't forget to stay connected. Visit our website, thevictorychurchint.org, and text WWA to 54244.
Thank you for watching, and we never want to end a broadcast without lifting our hands and giving glory to God. Without Him, none of this would be possible. And our prayer is that the Lord will bless you and keep you until next time.